Hi everybody and welcome back to Borderlines today. So today I thought I'd do a video with a twist because obviously we're in that time of the year again when everybody's looking at going on holiday. You know, I go on holiday next week, annual holiday, take kids over to the Isle of Wight every year. But I was speaking to a friend of mine because at this time of year get a lot of tourism coming into this country, especially into London. So as a kid, whenever I went on holiday with my mum always took me abroad. The amount of time I spent as a kid in France and to Spain, to be honest, as well, was ridiculous. Whenever I went, I'd always try and eat some of the dishes from the country that they were famous for. You know, I've eaten snails before. You know, I've had all that type of food, paellas, all that type of stuff. So I thought, right, if I bumped into somebody from abroad and they said to me, Kevin, I want to try some of your national dishes, what would you recommend me? You're going to put a lot of weight on, but what would I recommend them? So I started talking to a few of my friends. I thought, what would you recommend somebody? So we've got a list of mains and a list of desserts. And what I want everybody to do is see what would you add to this list, because obviously not everybody's taste is the same as mine. Some people might choose other things. So here we go with our main courses. And I bet virtually everybody is eating, if not everything on this list, the majority on this list. So we've got the good old fashioned classic fish and chips, bangers and mash, roast dinner. This one's a bit of a surprise. I only put this one on because my wife has quite a few of them, which is cream teas. Okay, you know, it's more of an older person's thing, but they are quite popular, especially at this time of year, warm weather and everything, going into hotels, coffee shops, that type of thing. Then obviously we've got cottage pie and shepherd's pie, which are quite similar. And for those that don't know the difference, primarily one's beef, one's lamb. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out which one's lamb and which one's beef, to be honest. Then, of course, you've got to have your all-day breakfast. How can you not have the all-day breakfast on there? Cullen skink. Now, this is the only thing on this list I've never had personally myself. Never eaten it before. Okay, but we've put it on there because it is one of the quintessential classic British dishes. Yes, it is Scottish, but it's still British. Toad in the hole. This is one a friend of mine said. So I know some people could say, yeah, but it's not British. Fillet steak and chips. You can change it to steak and chips if you want. But he said fillet steak, so we got to go with that. And then one that my kids absolutely hate, but I force feed them it, which is corned beef hash. Okay, so they're the mains. And a lot of these I actually feed my kids quite a lot. You know, they have fish and chips, bangers and mash, toad in the hole, cottage pie on an absolute regular basis. They do get the corned beef hash, but they moan about it like nothing else on this app, mainly because they don't like corned beef. Okay, so that's what we've got there. Now, for somebody that trained in catering, and I was more of a pastry chef than anything, and I have quite a sweet tooth, because as I tell my kids, what dessert's yours is also mine, which they don't like having to share with me, but they have to. Okay, so we got a list of some of the greatest and biggest classics ever. Beat them, most of them, anywhere in the world. And a lot of these, if you're old enough, you'll have been force-fed them at school. But I didn't mind because I loved them, to be honest. So, of course, We've got Spotted Dick. We've got the classic Eating Mess. We have Victoria Sponge. The English trifle, which I got force fed as a kid by my grandparents, especially my grandmother, because she made them every time I went over there. I don't mind, because I quite like custard, to be honest. Bakewell tart, which is still one of my favourites, still to this day. The good old-fashioned Arctic roll. Another school-time classic. Jam roly-poly. I do like a jam roly-poly. You don't get as big as I am without having a few jam roly-polies in your time. Eccles cakes, which my middle son is quite partial to an Eccles cake. If I buy Eccles cakes, I have to hide them because he will eat them all to himself. And one that a friend of mine said, bread and butter pudding. So that's our list. What would you add to it if you got asked by somebody, whether you was working in a restaurant or you bumped into somebody and they said to you, what would you advise them to try? What would you add on to that list? Because there's a lot of things you could still add on to there, especially when it comes to the dessert side. Seriously, to the dessert side. Now, there was one thing I never added on there, because my grandfather always ate apple pies, but he'd have apple pie with a piece of cheese. Don't know why cheese, but that's what he always would have. Now, there are those that would say apple pie is American. There's also those that would say apple pie is English. Now, because I don't want to get in the argument of is apple pie English or American, technically apple pie goes back to the 14th century in England. You know, so technically you should say it's English, but there are those who will adamantly say apple pie is American. Okay, so I'm going to ask you I'm actually going to ask two questions. Would you say apple pie is English or American? We'll start the debate. And two, what would you add onto that list? So let us know in the comments down below. But for now, everybody, thanks for watching. And we'll speak to you all again a bit later.